Barbara Mandrell has spent a lifetime in music, yet even now, there are parts of her story she has never fully shared. She has spoken about the hits, the television years, and the whirlwind pace that defined her career. But one chapter, the years intertwined with Roy Clark, has remained largely between her and the people who were there. To most fans, they were two country stars who occasionally shared a stage, their talents blending effortlessly. But behind the smiles and the easy banter was a friendship that ran far deeper than television appearances or concert lineups. It was a bond built on mutual respect, quiet encouragement, and a shared understanding of the demands and costs of life in the spotlight. Now, Barbara is finally opening up, and what she reveals about Roy Clark will not only surprise longtime fans, it will forever change how their story is remembered. Long before their paths crossed, Barbara Mandrell and Roy Clark were carving out separate but equally remarkable places in country music. Each was a master of their craft, and each approached performance with a blend of skill and charisma that set them apart. Barbara's journey began almost as soon as she could hold an instrument. Born into a musical family, she was on stage by the age of 11, touring with the Mandrell family band, and astonishing audiences with her ability to move from steel guitar to accordion to saxophone without missing a beat. Her early career was built on precision and versatility, earning her a reputation as one of the most accomplished musicians in Nashville long before she became a household name. Roy Clark's rise had a different rhythm. He came from humble beginnings in Virginia, learning guitar and banjo with a natural ease that made even seasoned musicians take notice. His blend of lightning-fast picking, showmanship, and humor made him a favorite in clubs and small venues, but it was his television appearances in the 1960s that catapulted him into the national spotlight. By the time he took over as host of Hee Haw in 1969, Roy was a star in his own right, a man equally at home trading jokes with Buck Owens as he was delivering a heartfelt ballad. The late 1970s and early 80s were a golden era for variety television, and both Barbara and Roy were at the heart of it. Barbara fronted Barbara Mandrell and the Mandrell Sisters, a weekly showcase that mixed music, comedy, and special guests. It wasn't just a television gig, it was a high-wire act of timing, musical range, and charm, and Barbara carried it with ease. Roy, meanwhile, was keeping Hee Haw firmly in the top ratings, drawing millions of viewers with its blend of rural humor and musical performances. His quick wit and welcoming presence made him a fixture in living rooms across America. Their worlds overlapped often at the Grand Ole Opry, at award shows, and at benefit concerts where the biggest names in country music came together. They were both professionals who thrived under the pressure of live performance, and both understood the discipline it took to make every note and every laugh land perfectly. To the public, these meetings were just another example of Nashville's tight-knit music community. But as the years went on, those shared moments would evolve into something more, the beginning of a working relationship, and eventually, a friendship that neither could have predicted. When Barbara Mandrell and Roy Clark first appeared on the same bill, it was easy to see why audiences responded so strongly. They weren't trying to compete, and they weren't playing to outshine one another. Instead, they seemed to instinctively find a rhythm, Barbara bringing her polished musicianship and elegant stage presence, Roy countering with humor, warmth, and a lightning-fast guitar solo that could turn a song into a spectacle. Their earliest collaborations often happened on television. Barbara would guest on Hee Haw, playing along with the comedic sketches before stepping into the spotlight for a song. Roy, in turn, would appear on Barbara Mandrell and the Mandrell Sisters, gamely joining in the scripted bits and showing a side of himself that went beyond his role as host. In each setting, they elevated the other. Barbara's sharp timing and comedy sketches surprised audiences, while Roy's ease in more formal musical arrangements showed his versatility. Producers noticed the chemistry. Viewers sent in letters, praising the way the two seemed to genuinely enjoy each other's company. It wasn't forced. It wasn't rehearsed into oblivion. There was an authenticity in the way Barbara laughed at Roy's ad-libs, and how Roy seemed to light up when Barbara took a solo. Beyond television, they shared stages at charity events and country music festivals, often playing to packed crowds that had grown up watching both of them. While some performers kept a certain distance off stage, Barbara and Roy were approachable and generous with fans, often lingering long after shows to sign autographs and pose for pictures. This shared openness with audiences only strengthened the connection between them. For Barbara, these joint appearances were more than just good television or concert bookings. She saw in Roy a performer who could bridge the gap between comedy and music without diminishing either. For Roy, working with Barbara meant sharing the stage with someone who matched his professionalism and his commitment to giving audiences their best. By the early 1980s, it was clear they had built a professional connection that went beyond convenience. They trusted each other in performance, a rare quality in an industry where one person's mistake could derail a live broadcast or a tight show schedule. And while they didn't yet realize it, the respect they built on stage was laying the foundation for a personal bond that would last for decades. Roy Clark never introduced himself as a mentor, and Barbara Mandrell never asked for one. Yet over time, his influence on her career became impossible to ignore. He wasn't the kind of person to sit someone down and deliver a formal lecture. Instead, his guidance came through observation, example, and small, timely words of encouragement. Barbara was navigating a career that demanded constant reinvention. Her variety show was a success, her music career was thriving, and her schedule was unrelenting. But success brought its own challenges: pressure from networks to maintain ratings, pressure from the music industry to stay competitive, and the personal toll of being in the public eye week after week. Roy understood all of it, because he had been living it for years. When Barbara visited Hee Haw, she would often watch Roy from the sidelines, noticing how he balanced the demands of a packed filming day with a lightness that kept his crew and cast at ease. He had a way of running a set without barking orders, setting a professional standard without draining the joy from the room. Barbara admired that balance, and she began adopting it in her own productions. He also had a knack for cutting through self-doubt. Barbara, despite her success, sometimes wondered if she could keep up with the relentless pace of television and touring. Roy's reassurance was simple but steady, reminding her that her audience wasn't tuning in for perfection, but for her. That truth gave her permission to step into each performance without the weight of having to outdo herself every time. More than anything, Roy treated her as an equal in an industry where female headliners still fought for the same respect as their male counterparts. He recognized her musicianship, her stagecraft, and her work ethic, and he made sure others did too. In a business where opportunities could be guarded, Roy's openness was a rare gift. Barbara would later reflect that some of the most important lessons she learned didn't come from formal training or business meetings, but from simply watching Roy handle the pressures of fame with grace. His example showed her that success didn't have to come at the expense of kindness, and that professionalism could exist alongside warmth. It was during these years that Barbara began to realize she had someone in her corner who wasn't just a colleague, but a steady presence she could count on both in and out of the spotlight. And as their careers continued to run in parallel, she would come to see just how much they had in common. From the outside, Barbara Mandrell and Roy Clark seemed unstoppable. Both were on television every week, both were selling out live shows, and both were fixtures at award ceremonies. But the truth behind the polished images was more complex. They were living parallel lives, defined by the same pressures, and that common ground became another thread binding their friendship. Barbara's workload during the height of Barbara Mandrell and the Mandrell Sisters was staggering. Between filming episodes, learning new material, perfecting comedy sketches, recording albums, and fulfilling tour dates, she was running on little more than discipline and determination. The success was undeniable, but it came with a cost. She had to fight to protect her health, her voice, and her time with family. Roy's challenges were no less demanding. As the face of Hee Haw, he carried the responsibility of keeping the show's audience engaged year after year. The format seemed effortless to viewers, but behind the scenes, it required careful planning, endless rehearsals, and the constant pressure to deliver something fresh while preserving what fans loved most. On top of that, Roy maintained a heavy touring schedule, often performing hundreds of dates in a single year. They understood each other in ways few others could. The smiles and easy banter that audiences saw on television were genuine, but they were also part of the job, a performance that had to be given even on days when exhaustion loomed. Barbara knew what it was like to step onto a set, feeling drained but determined. Roy knew the same feeling all too well. Over time, Barbara began to recognize something in Roy that deepened her respect for him. His ability to give to others, even when he had little left to spare. Whether it was encouraging a young musician backstage or sharing a moment with a fan after a long day, Roy never let fatigue diminish his generosity. That shared understanding of the hidden toll of success gave their friendship a certain quiet depth. They didn't need to talk about the grind in detail. The look in each other's eyes was often enough to say, "I know what you're carrying." And that mutual recognition created a trust that would last for decades. When Barbara Mandrell finally spoke openly about Roy Clark's place in her life, it wasn't to promote a project or revisit old television clips. It was to set the record straight about the depth of their connection, and to make sure people understood the kind of man Roy was behind the spotlight. She described him not simply as a colleague, but as one of the few people in the business she trusted without hesitation. In an industry where competition could fracture even long-standing relationships, Roy was a constant. He celebrated her successes without reservation and offered encouragement when she faced setbacks, never making her feel as though she had to prove her worth to him. Barbara admitted that his influence reached farther than she realized at the time. His example of professionalism, mixed with kindness, shaped the way she handled her own career, and his belief in her helped steady her during moments when the demands of fame felt overwhelming. Looking back, she understood that many of her biggest decisions, from how she led her own television show to how she managed the pressure of touring, were shaped in part by Roy's quiet guidance. She also spoke about his generosity of spirit, noting that it wasn't reserved for those at the top of the industry. Roy treated everyone, fellow headliners, crew members, young musicians, with the same respect and warmth. Barbara believed this was a large part of why he was so beloved, and why his passing left such a profound absence in the country music community. For Barbara, telling this story was as much about honoring Roy's legacy as it was about sharing her own truth. She wanted people to know that behind every shared stage, every laugh on television, and every moment of applause, there was a real friendship won, rooted in loyalty, mutual respect, and the shared understanding of what it took to keep going in a demanding business. In opening up, she gave fans not just a memory of two stars working side by side, but a glimpse of the human connection that made those moments possible. And in doing so, she ensured that Roy Clark's influence would be remembered not only for his music and television legacy, but for the lives he touched along the way. Barbara Mandrell's memories of Roy Clark reach far beyond the lights of television studios and the roar of concert crowds. They live in the quiet affirmations, the shared glances of understanding, and the knowledge that even at the height of their careers, they saw each other as more than just fellow performers. For audiences, their appearances together were moments of pure entertainment, two masters of their craft, blending music, humor, and heart. But for Barbara, those moments were part of a much bigger story. They represented a friendship built on loyalty and respect, a connection that never wavered despite the constant demands of their profession. Roy Clark's influence can still be felt in the way Barbara carries herself today. The grace with which she handles public life, the care she shows to younger artists, and the steady warmth she offers to audiences all reflect the lessons she learned from him. His example proved that success isn't just measured by charts or ratings, but by the way you treat people when the spotlight isn't on you. In speaking out now, Barbara has given fans a fuller picture of the man they thought they knew. And in doing so, she's also revealed a deeper truth about herself, that the values she holds most dear were shaped in part by one of country music's most beloved figures. Roy's music, his humor, and his generosity live on. And for Barbara, so does the gratitude for a friendship that changed her life in ways words can only begin to capture. For more emotional stories, check out this video.